So, welcome back. Um, I've actually just started sort of preparing the garden for winter. And my mom came to visit, so I sort of used her helping hands to prepare everything I had to do before the winter time. So, as you may remember from my previous garden project video, we had a lot of work done earlier in the spring. And since then, we've just maintained it, haven't done anything. And we've been trying to figure out what else we would plant, especially in the back garden. It's a smaller space, so most of our garden is actually the front yard. And in the back, you have a lot of shade. So I wanted to do a lot of thinking about what would flourish there. And what we did was we weeded through the entire sort of back part. And then we mulched it with cardboard. And this is something that my mom has actually done many times for several years, and it's worked very well for her. So it has sort of many different purposes, but essentially it blocks the sunlight, so it drowns out the weeds. And now in winter, all of that cardboard, or most of it, should just dissolve into the ground, and then we can start off fresh in spring. Around May, when we would start planting things. So that was the idea. Basically, we did this same process to the backyard and also behind the hedges and the slope or the hill that we have in the front yard. So we just ripped up a ton of cardboard, removed the tape, removed stickers and plastic, and then just cut out pieces that would fit and that we could just place underneath either the weeds that we had weeded or then the mulch that we already had behind the hedges. And there was a lot of weeding to be done in the hill, actually. It was sort of overtaken by a ton of dandelions, but more importantly, bindweeds. Now, bindweed looks kind of nice. If you're not familiar with gardening and weeds and what you need to rip out, at first sight, it wouldn't really strike you as something to get rid of because it actually looks quite pretty. I was a complete novice, actually, when I started out here, and my mom was the one that originally last spring told me to rip them out as soon as I see them. They actually can grow very strong, and the slope was completely full of them. And ripping them out was kind of hard. They just, like the name suggests, they bind themselves onto other plants and they sort of take all their water and power. So, for example, we had a little bit of ivy growing on the slope, but I think it never really started growing more on the fence because of the bindweed that was wrapping itself around it. It just takes over, it grows very, very fast. So the best thing is to sort of go through, all of your flower beds and everything, wherever you've mulched, and look out for bindweed like every week, because when you get it, when it's just not that strong, it's easier. After that, their roots obviously become harder and harder to get out of the ground and so on. So it's just much easier if you sort of stay on top of it. Obviously, we all have busy schedules and other things to do. We're not, gardening 24/7, but with that being said, had I done this more often, the process would have taken much less time this time. So my mom and we spent a total of probably 6 hours doing that over 2 days. So you can imagine if I spent like 15 minutes every week doing that, we wouldn't have been in this situation. The other thing that I found on that slope was that there was a ton of roses growing there, and it had actually somehow spread through the chain link fence from the neighbor's yard. And I'm not sure that it's actually a blooming kind of rose, but I left some of it intact for next spring. I'll see. But I had to take some of it out just because it was making the maintenance very difficult because of the thorns and everything. So it made weeding there in the corner very hard. And what I actually just really want is for the ivy to spread. So that was sort of what I had planned for the chain link fence on the slope. Then, because of the bindweed, a lot of the ground cover plants that had been planted by the previous owners hadn't spread either. So now that I vowed to stay more on top of this, I think they will probably start spreading next spring and we'll be in a much better situation. And we can repeat the cardboard mulching process as many times as it takes, and just see how it goes. Then the next part of the process that we wanted to get on top of after weeding and preparing the garden for winter was just making a plan for what we're going to plant next spring. So we actually worked with a garden designer from Denmark that happens to be my friend, and she has started her own business. I will link it in the description so you can check out her website and her offerings. We basically had no idea what to do here. We felt kind of overwhelmed after moving in. And in this sort of situation, I would actually highly recommend that you go to a garden designer to help sort of unblock that, because you may have a mental block that I did after moving in because I was just so ignorant of gardening that I didn't know where to start. So we sort of started unblocking and untackling those things. And she helped visualize what I actually should do. And I'm going to start using that plan next spring. And here you can see some visuals. And we're going to start just with the stairs that come from the parking space, and we're also going to start with the primary bedroom balcony. So on the primary bedroom balcony, because we have a sauna there, we did want to have some privacy. Right now that's sort of missing, and we want to have some hanging plants as well as some plants that sort of block the view, and then also just start growing nice looking flowers in pots. And the main thing for me is that I really want things to be easy to maintain, because I don't have like 20 hours a week to spend on gardening. So it has to sort of take care of itself for the most part. Obviously, we can water things, we can do the weeding that I talked about earlier in the video, but I do not want to have to spend hours every day doing a ton of maintenance. So that was the starting point. And on the stairs, we want to plant some climber plants so that we can hide that chain link fence. And we did go to the garden store and did a little bit of scouting so that we could create a budget for how much we need to spend next spring on this part of the garden project. Obviously, this time span will go on for years. A garden is basically never ready. I mean, you can always work on it. But the priorities for us will be those two, and then to plant a sort of herb garden in the backyard. So there, the plan is to plant, for example, dill, parsley, some rhubarb, and just a ton of other herbs, and try to keep it planted full of things that are not weeds to keep it from being overgrown with weeds again. So that's sort of my plan. And we also would like for the ivy to spread back there. Like I mentioned, it's a very shady area, so it'll be a little bit difficult for a lot of things to grow back there, but ivy is something that does flourish in the shade. So I think that's about it. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time. Bye.